way, whether it's from a law enforcement perspective or a city or county community service perspective or a taxpayer perspective, that we as a state are going to be able to deal with that many people coming across our border illegally. And because of that, we have already taken certain measures to step up what Texas is doing, undertaking unprecedented action to make sure that we're trying to stem the flow of illegal immigrants. One of these measures is the measure of what we're doing to bus people from the Rio Grande Valley or from the border region to Washington, D.C. The catalyst for this was in my talking with local officials on the border. They were having the Biden administration just drop off dozens, if not hundreds, of migrants into their community that they had no capability of dealing with whatsoever. Some of those local communities were putting people on buses, sending them right here to San Antonio, Texas. I said, I have a better idea. Let's not send them to San Antonio. Let's send them to Washington, D.C. And ever since then, we have now sent a total of 10 buses of migrants from the border region to Washington, D.C., including 3 that are arriving today. Typically, until yesterday, we've been sending about 1 bus a day. Yesterday was the first day that we sent 2 buses in one day. Other strategies involve things like establishing boat blockades to prevent people from being able to cross the river. Now, also, very importantly, historically, candidly, because the Biden administration is, for one, not imposing federal law and securing the border, and then for another, Biden administration is not doing what other presidents have done, and that is to work with officials in Mexico to try to resolve this problem. It has fallen on the shoulders of the Texas governor, myself, to negotiate with the governors of Mexico for better border security. That's exactly what I did last week, establishing 4 historic agreements with the 4 governors of the 4 Mexican states that are adjacent to Texas that have border bridges coming into our states. And what they've agreed to is heightened border security measures on their side of the border that will reduce illegal immigration into Texas. You can see examples of exactly what they're doing if you just look at my Twitter account today and see what we posted about what the governor of Coahuila and what the state of Coahuila is doing to increase the border security presence. It's very impressive. Bottom line is this on the border, and that is in just a matter of a few weeks, I have done more to secure the border with Mexico than President Biden has done in his entire time in office. The bottom line is this: Texans deserve safe communities, whether it's on the border, whether it's in San Antonio, whether it's in the Panhandle, it does not matter. Safety in your communities is of paramount importance in Texas. Safe communities is a Texas value. Safe communities need law enforcement officers to help keep those communities safe. Law enforcement officers like those here today. The reason why I came here today is to meet with these representatives of law enforcement to learn more about what we as a state can do to address crime in our state, as well as to address the challenges that these law enforcement officers are having. These are ideas and strategies on top of the ones I just told you about that we've already undertaken. And I wrote some notes down about some of the things that came up that I'll be taking back to Austin, Texas, and working with members of the legislature on. One is there is a need for increase in funding. As was pointed out, it's one thing to prevent cities from defunding law enforcement, but when you look at the increase in population, that leads to an increase in demand for law enforcement, an increase in demand that's not being met with the funding that's being provided. And so we will look into strategies to provide more funding and establish higher staffing levels to ensure that law enforcement will be able to achieve our common goal, and that is to provide safe communities. Another thing that was brought up today is something that legislators in Austin, we grappled with this past session, but were unable to come up with an answer to. But because I heard it again today, we're going to go work to tackle it again this next session. And that is, we as a state need to hold district attorneys accountable for their lax policies in not prosecuting certain crimes that either let dangerous criminals out of being prosecuted, or because of their lax policies, it leads to more crime. An easy example is some DAs have a practice of not prosecuting people who steal under a certain dollar amount. If that's going to happen, that's going to lead to great devastation for the stores that are providing goods that these criminals can just walk in and walk out with. And so we will once again be addressing whether or not there are strategies that the state of Texas can use to hold district attorneys accountable for not enforcing the laws that are policy decisions by the legislature that are imposed in statute. Another thing brought up, which I thought was interesting because it's contrary to what I hear from other voices. The comment was more law enforcement officers who focus on mental health. So that there are certain crime scenes or certain situations where a law enforcement officer will be called out to that does require someone with mental health expertise. Some have said that, well, as opposed to sending a law enforcement officer, something like a social worker should be sent. And as was easily pointed out, those situations can quickly escalate from something that's not potentially criminal or not potentially dangerous to something that is both dangerous and criminal, which is why you need a trained law enforcement officer who's also trained with mental health skills to be able to de-escalate that situation in a very peaceful way. And then I could go on. I'll mention one last thing because it's something that I thought we had taken care of, but apparently not. And that is, we're finding here in San Antonio, Texas, a proliferation of cartels advertising on TikTok, recruiting teenagers to assist the cartels in their crimes, whether it be smuggling people, smuggling drugs, or other crimes. That's something that must stop. And we're going to stop it first by talking to TikTok. I'm talking to TikTok directly right now. TikTok, stop allowing your platform to be used for cartels to advertise to recruit Texans or Americans to commit crimes aiding and abetting cartels. Otherwise, TikTok, you are a part of a criminal enterprise of aiding and abetting cartels committing crimes in the United States of America. Texans want a law and order state. I will work with our law enforcement officers to achieve that goal. Someone I work with every day to achieve that goal is the Director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, Stephen Crawl.
Thank you, Governor. You know, one of the consequences of an unsecured border, sadly, is that our police officers and deputies in Bexar County now serve on the front line of combating transnational crime. It's one of the things you heard again and again, Governor, during this conversation. And they're concerned. They're battling the cartels. They're battling, you know, certainly gangs that work with the cartels. San Antonio has become a transshipment center for people and drugs, not just for Texas, but for our nation. And it's a retail distribution for drugs. So methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, and now fentanyl, those things are readily available in our streets. And I know that our leaders, you know, certainly at the legislature and the county commissioner, they understand these things and the threat, and I know these police officers do. And we're honored to be with them because they are battling on the front line. And the border, where do you draw it anymore? And it's really difficult to draw where that border is, that distinguishing part. And Governor, thank you for calling out TikTok. At the end of the day, you know, there's something despicable always in terms of when the cartels are involved, but when they recruit our children, okay, to engage in ongoing criminal activity at such an early age and put them in serious, dangerous positions and risk not only their lives, the lives of the migrants they're moving up, but also the citizens of San Antonio and Bexar County when they get in these bailouts. So, and thank you for always having the back for law enforcement officers. It means a lot to these men and women here. I know that, and God bless you for that, sir.
Thank you. And now we're going to Lieutenant Payne.
Thank you, Governor. We want to just say from a law enforcement community in Bexar County, we appreciate all that you have done and that we know that you will continue to do in the time that you were governor for Texas, which hopefully is a very long time, sir. Everybody wants to have a safe community. And here in Bexar County, as we are just booming in population and growing, especially in the unincorporated areas, it puts our officers at a risk every day. It was just a few weeks ago that we had an officer shot in the line of duty here in San Antonio. And these are things that we know that are an everyday possibility for us. But as the communities grow and more people come to San Antonio, and not just this community, but other communities across Texas, and our agencies do not grow along with those areas, it puts us in a very, very sad situation staffing-wise, and it puts us in a very unsafe situation for our officers, but not just our officers, but for those who live in our communities. And so we hope that we will be able to champion some things in legislation to help that become a reality for staffing for us. And furthermore, as the governor said about district attorneys and holding them accountable, look, when an officer has to go out and spend hours on arresting somebody only to take them down to the magistrate's office for them to walk right back out and go right back out on the streets because district attorneys will not prosecute people, that is a problem. And that puts you at risk. And one day it might be just a small little percentage of marijuana that they have, but the next it's a moment where it's a violent crime. And until we start prosecuting people and holding people accountable, this will constantly be a problem for the safety of the constituents of Bexar County. Thank you, Governor, for being here, and I'll turn it over to Don.
Chief Chiaran.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor, for inviting us all together here. Thank you, Commissioner, legislators. I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and I've worked side by side with a lot of these officers. I appreciate your comments. I agree with everything you said. This is a difficult job. You know, everything you said, day in, day out. Today, 2 officers were injured here. I'm a lifelong resident of San Antonio. I'm a Texan. You know, what do we all want? We all want a safe place. We want, we want the elderly safe. We want our children safe. You know, we need more officers. It's an agreement. We're all short-staffed. In San Antonio, I know this, we're talking about Texas. San Antonio, I mean, all counties, Texas is growing. We're booming. You know, San Antonio will have another 1 million residents in the next 10 years. We need more officers. And I ask, that we appreciate, what they do. This is a difficult job. It's not easy. Day in, day out, these fine men and women, they never know what's going to happen. They never know what's, if they're coming back home. Their families don't know. Easter, this past weekend, everybody's enjoying it. We were at a BRAC, whatever. You were enjoying it with your family. You have police officers, first responders out doing the job, protecting you, keeping you safe. And if we would respect these people, again, I concur with what was said. We have officers spend hours doing hard work, making an arrest, and then people get out. People don't see that. All the hard work, the physical work, the injuries, everything that goes into what an officer does, and the disrespect, and again, they get it. Officers get it. It's part of the job. But if we would, that's part of the issue here is if people would just appreciate a little more, say hi, whenever, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. Whenever somebody, and we have a lot of support out there, and this is Texas, we still appreciate it. And whenever somebody comes up and gives a compliment to me, because they see me, they see some stars on my, I always tell them to say thank you to my officers, okay? And if, I tell my officers, hey, they gave us a compliment, because they need to hear that. So please thank your officers, your first responders, okay? Again, we do need staffing. I know, we're all aware it's a funding issue, but it's a priority. We all want safety. We all, that's, when we look at priorities, businesses want a safe environment for growth. We all want our families safe, so, let's find a way. It's something that would benefit us all. And again, it's about national security, public safety. I don't have any stake into what it is, It's immigration. That's a difficult issue. But it's national security and public safety. like we discussed, I've been there myself too. Those border patrol, those officers, I mean, God bless them. That's a difficult job. I mean, those guys are so, you know, you have to see it with your own eyes. And if, you know, you don't want to, but if you were to see it, the things that they put up with, you know, so, and again, to me, I don't have this, you know, I'm not taking a stake other than it's public safety and it's national security. You know, that comes our way. San Antonio's so close, Texas, you know, we're a gateway. So, you know, we need to be aware of that. Think of your own families, think of their safety. You know, we all want safety, so. Governor, I appreciate you getting us all together, you listening to us, and I appreciate it. You did listen. You took a lot of good notes there, and you understand what we're talking about. Really appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
I understand and I care. And I'm grateful to all the law enforcement officers here as well as across the state of Texas. We'll take a few questions.
Governor, Matt Roy, WAIKBB. A couple days ago on Hannity, you were talking about the border issue, saying that you can turn on the DPS inspections again and snap a finger, destroying Mexico economy. But are you at all concerned what that's going to do to the Texas and San Antonio economy if you were to do that?
So obviously, there are concerns about the economy, but there are even larger concerns about the unabated illegal immigration that the Biden administration is promoting. What is the cost imposed on Americans by the more than 2 million illegal immigrants who have come across the border under the Biden administration? What will be the cost to Americans of having maybe 6 million immigrants come across the border illegally just in this next year if the Biden administration continues with this pathway of eliminating the enforcement of Title 42? That's an extraordinary cost. What's also extraordinary, this is the first president that I've ever known who has not lifted a finger to actually enforce the immigration laws passed by the United States Congress. Texans and Americans are bearing the cost of that. The Biden administration needs to step up and start enforcing the laws passed by Congress, period.
Governor, I have two questions. Santiago with Telemundo. Quick question. I have two questions. The first one, you talked about the buses and the immigrants. Some of the immigrants that arrived to Washington, D.C. are very grateful that you gave them a free ride to the Northeast. Was that part of your plan to help the immigrants reach the final destination? And the second question is about Melissa Lucio. She's about to be executed next week for a crime that she said she didn't commit. There's new evidence. Do you know about the case, and when are you planning to say something about it?
So first, with regard to the death penalty that could arise next week, and that is, I still have not received a report from the Texas Board of Pardons and Parole. That's a requirement for the governor to receive that before any action is taken. And when I receive that, I'll consider it and take whatever action I think is appropriate. The first part of the question, I want to explain this, and that is the decision and the action to bus people from border communities was to alleviate the strain that's put on the local communities along the border. They were having the Biden administration just dump on these local communities dozens, if not hundreds, of illegal immigrants that these communities had no way of dealing with whatsoever. And so we are aiding those local communities by busing them out of there. And as opposed to busing them to a location somewhere in the state of Texas, we want to take them all the way to Washington, D.C. I'm going to tell you something that's just astonishing. The biggest challenge that the President of the United States is dealing with, which also involves national security, by the way, is the open border. And not once has President Biden been to the border to see exactly what's going on. If he will not come to the border, I'm going to take the border to President Biden. He will see by these daily flows of buses of what it's going to be like, what Texans are dealing with. And he and the members of Congress are going to have to deal with it directly.
You face some pressure, some of it political, some of it not political, to invoke Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution to declare it an invasion and devote state resources accordingly. Is that something you're considering?
So this is something that I began studying back when I was the Attorney General of Texas, something that I've continued to study. And there are some issues that we're looking at that we've been provided no answer on. The operation as it would work is to put these people and deport them immediately. These are people who already have papers to roam freely in the United States. As soon as we drop them off across the border, they would just come right back across the border. And so all we would be doing is creating a revolving door. The second thing is, my general counsel received a memorandum from the former head of Border Patrol about this very issue. That memorandum had multiple references in there to understand that if we do use this strategy, it could expose law enforcement in the state of Texas to being prosecuted. And so no one has talked about that. And then if you were to look at the opinion that was written by the Attorney General in Arizona, they said, yeah, a governor can invoke, Article 1, Section 10, et cetera. If you look at the next to last paragraph, it then concludes, of course, any action by the governor must be consistent with federal law. And what that is suggesting is that there are federal laws that law enforcement could be prosecuted under if they were to take someone without authority and immediately return them across the border. So is it something we're looking into? Yes. You know me well enough to know I will look at every legal issue about a policy before we undertake action on that issue.
Two more questions.
How many migrants were on that bus? You said there's
What
10
is
buses?
specifically what the governors of Mexico promised you to try to deter, do something? Because remember, that border, that piece of land is also federal government issue.
Right.
Just like here in the States. So I want to know exactly what Governor Coahuila, what is what they told you? Because we know that these people are managed by cartels. So are the governors of Mexico, those 4 governors, willing to do something against the cartels that are trafficking these people? What is exactly what they?
And it depends on which state, but in general, one strategy is to reduce the illegal migrants. They're all coming from the south, and they will work on their southern border to reduce the illegal migrants coming forward from the southern border. In addition, once or if they do get into their state, they will use strategies to disrupt those and to apprehend them and turn them over to the federal government before they make it to the border. If they make it to their border, one strategy they are deploying as we speak today, that you can find out on what I posted on social media, they have on the border their same level of law enforcement like what we have on our border. Then in addition to that, specifically identified in these agreements, they are taking on the responsibility of preventing anybody from coming across the border at these low water crossings where people are just walking across the border. Those are just some of the many strategies that were included in those agreements.
Last question. Last question.
Buses, you said there's been 10 that have been sent, but how many people have actually been on the buses?
Yeah, so the number of people on the buses varies because it depends on how many people are in these local communities that are just standing around that the local community has us put on the bus. It's been as high as, I think, 28 or something like that, and as low as something like 9. The 9, I think, was on Good Friday when there were just fewer people to be transported. We will transport as many people as we can, and this is going to be an ongoing process.
So less than 300 people in 10 buses?
I don't know the total number.
Great, thank you guys so much. Thank you. Q&A is over. Thank you. If you can make your way to the exit.